All right, U3 Sports Talk, unscripted, unfiltered, unapologetic, coming to you tonight with a very good interview. Of course, as always, got my man Cisco, and we got to bring in big time Lakers fan, as you can see from the background, the backdrop, got the LeBron and the Kobe fathead behind him. Uh, he goes by Big Ego. We're not gonna get into that, but that's fine. But welcome in. How you doing, brother?
Loving life, man. Loving life.
Hey,
Celebrating and enjoying every day to its fullest.
hey,
Good to see you,
hey,
bro.
nothing
Good to see
wrong
you,
with
bro.
that.
Good to
Amen to
see you,
that,
bro.
brother. So listen, as before we get started, of course, we got to ask everyone who's watching to please make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications for U3 Sports Talk so that as we post new content on the daily, we want you to be the first to get it and know that it is out there. So obviously, we got to start with, today being, January 26th, the 1 year, anniversary of the passing of Kobe, and we got to talk about Kobe. So I want to go to you and just kind of get your thoughts on the day. And do you remember, where you were, when you got the news, and just, kind of your thoughts on that?
So I don't remember exactly what the plans were that day. Um, I know that it was a day that I was planning to stay at home, and I'm glad that was the intent because I'm not a very emotional person, but my connection with Kobe was a very emotional connection, um, and that his passing had a very strong impact. And I'm not afraid to say, I'm not ashamed to say that when I got that news, I definitely had to reach out to my fellow buddies and to share some type of joyous celebration because I had to find a way to end those tears. And even my family, who knows me well, knows that I don't believe in you know um, in overreacting to situations, but I felt like that was appropriate time to be able to share that emotion so that I could work my way through that process and then now be to where we're at today, a year later, and be able to say, I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be able to be able to witness his excellence and allow him to serve as a source of motivation to let me know that you can always push through any challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of interesting you brought that up because I think that's the thing about Kobe, that even if you weren't a big Kobe fan, and I was not a big Kobe fan, I always respected just that drive and that work ethic, and that willingness to get better and do better, every single day. And even in his mistakes and his shortcomings in his life, he always seemed to find a way to come back from it better. Was that kind of your thought about him? Even though obviously you're reconciling his life, when you get the news and things like that, did that thought ever cross your mind?
So absolutely, that was the first thing. Once I got over the feeling sorry for him process, the mourning, it was really more of a celebration and a validation of what I learned from him. Um, in being a very strong-willed and confident person, hence by my nickname, Big Ego. Um, I found it really easy to be able to justify my choice to be extremely confident in your decisions and have conviction in your abilities by
Yeah,
watching his work ethic and hearing him talk about, there's no such thing as failure. That the only time that you're going to lose against your opponent is when he's put in more work and he's less prepared than you.
right.
So um, him taking ownership of his fate allowed me to take ownership of the fact that it's okay to take credit for your accomplishments and realize that your failures are learning points and to be able to push through those.
Yeah, and one thing you share with Kobe, I don't, is that you both were girl dads. So thinking about just the girl dad he was and the father he was, did that in any way make you, again, kind of think about your relationship, as a father with your daughter, things like that?
Oh, absolutely. Um, my oldest girl, who's 15, I feel like that's the danger zone,
Yeah.
where where you cross into those dark waters where you either gonna sink or swim. Was so much different than raising. I had my boy first. Thank God that he prepared me for being a father the
Right.
easy way first.
Right. Yeah.
Son who I can mold in my image. He was willing to allow me to do that. Daughter, on the other hand, it's on their time. And I know one thing that I noticed, or I felt that I was witnessing with Kobe and Gigi, is that he had to take an approach that I had to learn, which is you don't mold girls in your image, that you allow them to choose their time to willing to show you what they're willing to accept.
Right.
And at the time of Kobe and Gigi's passing, um, I saw her allowing him to be able to pass on that gift of basketball to where
Right.
she chose that was something he was going to love, and that passion that he had, that, oh, is this what you want? And he was so willing to give. Finally, I can empower you with my knowledge and my experience in a way that you're so willing to receive.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he was receiving it to the fullest, as indicated by her scholarship offers that she was already getting and things of that nature at such a young age.
Yeah, and it's really funny because he was on Jimmy Kimmel, I think it was probably a year or two ago, and he was talking about Gigi, and he was saying how, he was with her, and the guy was like, "Hey man, when you gonna have a boy, to pass the legacy on to?" And he was like, Gigi was like, "Yo, I got this," So it was like she had that Mamba in her, from such a young age, and again, to your point, really allowing her to come into that. He never forced that on her. He really allowed her to come into that, on her own. But just, kind of last thing, and again, I don't want to, spin, because again, it's still really crazy even processing the fact that Kobe's gone, because still doesn't seem to feel real, in a lot of ways. But just thinking about your life as a Laker fan, when you 20 years from now, when you're, prayerfully talking to your grandchildren and you're telling them about Kobe, what are you going to say to them about, Kobe?
Really simple to sum it up. He's the greatest Laker, born a Laker. Late 70s when I was born, without being too specific. Born right into an era of success and championships. So I guess I was spoiled at an early age to say either you win it all or you did nothing. So when Kobe came around, as you can see by my Laker wall, it all started with, Magic.
Right.
And when Kobe came around, he understood what winning was about. He understood that you either win or you you accomplished absolutely nothing.
Right. So go ahead.
So in seeing him strive for that championship banners, which is all we care about in Los Angeles,
Right.
and him having success with it, even doing it his own way, I can definitely tell them that he was the greatest Laker ever, with confidence, despite the fact that he's not the Laker that scored the most points. He without a doubt scored the most points in a Laker uniform and had the greatest impact on the Lakers establishment, even more so than Magic Johnson and I think than LeBron James can ever have.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's an interesting segue into our next topic, because, we got to talk a little Laker history. Coming into your Laker fandom in the 80s, you would put Kobe ahead of Magic on the all-time pantheon of Lakers?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. It took that somewhere in between the fourth and fifth championship before I could say that confidently, because I was a ride or die Magic fan. I would have arguments for about 10 years about Magic superiority over Jordan. And I only say that, not that I believe it at this point, but at the time I believed that Magic was a greater player than Jordan. And I only say that to tell you how high of an esteem I had for Magic Johnson. But Kobe, I think, did more with less than even Magic did. So we can talk about that more if you disagree. But I think that it's pretty clear by the evidence on the court that despite Kobe's tactics, he might not have been as fun and lovable as Magic and LeBron might be, but he was extremely effective.
No, he was a man. I hate to talk. He was a like he said, he had no time. Like he said, he had no time for friends at all. So it was about winning championships. But I thought I misheard something because they may have spiked my beer. I thought he said he put Kobe above Magic. Is that what happened?
That is exactly what you heard.
Oh yeah, he spiked something in me. I knew something was wrong when the guy gave me my beer can, and it was in a Burger King bag instead of just the brown bag. I knew something was wrong then. So, and like I said, my bad, Big O.
Here's my thing, and I tell people all the time, when I'm doing an all-time ranking or I'm comparing all-time greats, I don't like to use the fact that someone's not here anymore to, prop them up on that list. Yeah. So, for me, I have Kobe as the third greatest Laker of all time. And it's not because Kobe isn't an all-time great Laker, but two specific reasons why I have him third all time. I think there are two Lakers who played, obviously, either the majority or all of their career with the Lakers, who are two of the greatest at their position of all time. And that's Magic and Kareem. And that Kobe, I have Kobe as the second greatest shooting guard of all time after Michael, of course. So by proxy, that makes him, for me, the third greatest Laker of all time. But, anybody who has Kobe number one, again, I don't think I would argue too much. I'm just surprised someone who, came up actually seeing Magic and seeing Kareem put Kobe ahead of those two, given, and again, a lot of it was, obviously, with the Lakers 4 years before Magic got there and things of that nature. And they didn't win until Magic got there. But I've always said great centers don't win without great wings, except for Hakeem in '94. So, they needed that great wing and they got it in Magic. And then they were able to go on that great run. But also they were in the finals every year in the 80s, except for 2 seasons. And those 2 seasons they were in the finals, they were in the Western Conference Finals. So, I look at that decade of dominance and that Magic and Kareem went on. And they also, have more individual accolades in terms of MVPs and things of that nature over Kobe. So I have Kobe as the third greatest Laker. But, listen, I won't bemoan your list, but we
got to talk about that. We can't skip by it.
Well, but here's the thing too, though. Within that pantheon of Lakers, during each of those dominant periods for say Kobe during his reign and Kareem and Magic, but within that time frame of Kareem and Magic, there was a certain year or period to where years where they were considered the best player on the planet, where they were the dominating force. I know Kobe has 2 MVPs or one MVP. Yeah. So that's, to me, that's one thing. There was never a time to where you thought Kobe was the best player in the NBA.
What?
Or the most dominant player in the NBA.
I want to put a caveat to that. I don't think there was a time when I think Kobe was the best player in the NBA, the Lakers were going home in the first round or missing the playoffs altogether.
Good point. I agree with that. Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
No.
Sometimes we misspeak.
Yeah, no.
I didn't misspeak. I didn't misspeak.
You had to misspeak.
I didn't misspeak. How did I misspeak? What are you talking about?
You said that Kobe was never the most dominant player in the NBA, and I'm sure that you didn't mean that, especially based off of just the fact that he only has 1 MVP.
Yeah. So and again,
allow me to retort. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead. Okay. First of all, there was never a time to where you thought, okay, Kobe Bryant was just a dominant force, or let me see, because he just wasn't. He unfortunately, there's certain outliers, right? He came at a time when he came in during the time when it was him and Shaq was the dominant force. At the same time, Jordan was still in the NBA. he was still Jordan.
I agree.
He had they transitioned. All right. LeBron James comes in, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, they all get drafted. And then as soon as LeBron James,
you skipped about 5 years in that timeline.
Yeah, within that 5 years, there was never a time period where you said, because when Michael Jordan was dominant, he was dominant for the entire time that he was in it. He was within the 6 years.
So I think that you missed the error, and probably not intentionally, but between 2003 and 2006. This is before Jordan. This is after Jordan was gone.
Sure.
This is after Shaq had already reached his peak and was on the decline.
Right.
After 2003, 2004, Shaq wasn't Shaq anymore.
Okay.
Shaq was now led by Dwayne Wade. The first year that he left Laker Dome and he went and got that championship in Miami, Shaq was still Shaq. Year number 2, Shaq wasn't Shaq anymore. And during that time frame is when Kobe and Steve Nash had these forgotten years where Kobe was the best player in the NBA and Steve Nash kept getting MVP awards, which we still, Laker fans to this day, feel like were very undeserved MVP awards. This is the 81 year. Well, this is after Denver, and it's undisputable that no one in the NBA
everything's disputed, brother. Go ahead.
Was able to guard Kobe during that time frame. But you're absolutely right. You bring a good point that a lot of times when it comes to MVP voting, which us real basketball enthusiasts don't use to determine who's the best player because it has nothing to do with real basketball. It's more about what the media who they want to popularize. So we don't put MVP awards in the discussion as far as who the greatest player is.
They do when it comes to Jordan, but that's neither here nor there. Different topic. Topic.
So yeah, I want to respond. So a couple things. So I've always said Kobe's best era in terms of his individual dominance was probably 2004 to 2006.
Agreed.
But when I again I have on my all-time list, I actually have Kobe number 12 on my all-time list because when he was at his most dominant, it didn't necessarily equate to team success. They weren't winning championships. So I have him number 12 all time in that on the all-time greats list. Now, people will say you have him number 12. Yeah, if you were putting together the 12 best basketball players ever and you were putting together a team, Kobe would be on that team without question. I just don't have him in my top 10 because when I look at his era when he was individually the best player in the league and he was unguardable, they were going home in the first round or missing the playoffs altogether. So that's why I don't have him in my top 10. And there are other factors as well. Again, I look at guys who had dominant eras in the league where they were unstoppable. Their teams were winning championships and nobody could guard them. Akeem in 94, 95 was that guy where he was unstoppable. Nobody could guard him and his teams were winning championships. Magic from 87 to 90 was that guy where he became the best player in the league. Nobody could guard him, and the Lakers were winning championships. Michael Jordan and Kareem, in my view, are the only two guys in NBA history to have two distinct eras in their careers where they were the best player in the league. Nobody could guard them, and their teams were winning championships. Kareem from 80 to 82 was unstoppable. No one could guard them. No one could stop them. And the Lakers were winning championships. And then his early 70s, his Bucks years from 70 to 72, he was the best player in the league. The Bucks were winning won a championship. Michael, obviously his two eras in the 90s where, when he came back, they're the only two. So Kobe, when I look at his career, and again, this is no way to disparage his career, but when I just look at his era when he was individually the best player in the league, it didn't equate team success at all. So that's the only reason why I don't have him in my top 10.
I understand the reasoning, but how much can you fault the player for the GM though?
Well, so I'll say
when you're taking 50 shots in a game, I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, because and what people don't really realize is in that era, Kobe had one season where he took more shots than any of his two teammates combined.
Right.
You know, and it was not good. And
wasn't pretty. Wasn't pretty.
And again,
how can you say the 81 points in the game is not good though?
Well, no, I mean it's one game. You know, it's one game. And again, I remember that game, and they needed him to score like that to win the game. I remember that game.
Right.
I also remember that, you know, again, it was one game of 82. And again, it didn't necessarily equate to them winning
anything.
I mean, again, I think that year they went home in the first round. So, you know, it was not a good time, even though he was the best player in the league. So, and again, when I look at his career, he didn't win without Shaq, and he didn't win without another dominant big man in Pau Gasol. And so, you know, he needed those two guys to win.
So I can't think of another player that single-handedly won or transformed a franchise. I shouldn't say transformed, that didn't require another superstar to win. I can think of maybe one or two.
Hakeem is the only one. If you look at
who? Hakeem?
Like Hakeem Olajuwon. If you look at historic Hakeem in '94, that '94 Rockets team. No, I'll come to him in a minute. Hakeem in '94 is the only superstar to win a championship without playing with another All-Star or Hall of Famer.
So Kenny Smith has never been an All-Star, nor Robert Horry. We know Sam Cassell's. He may have been.
I guess that you're trying to say that Clyde Drexler was over the hill and washed up at that.
That was '95. That was '95. I'm talking about '94. '95. Remember, Clyde came in '95, the middle of the '95.
Vernon Maxwell, Sam Cassell.
Those guys weren't all-stars. They were good players, but they weren't all-stars.
So, and let's keep in mind that timing matters, right? Just like
outliers, absolutely.
Just like this joker that moved into the Los Angeles basement last year that everybody thought was the greatest player in the NBA because he won a championship. But timing matters. Sometimes people get injured, people retire. In Kawhi's case, people got injured. In Hakeem's case, people retired. And I think that Hakeem was the most skilled center of all time.
Stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
Stop. Well,
Pause.
Well, so notice he said most skilled. He didn't say greatest center of all time. He said
No.
He's not the most skilled?
No.
Because he had the most dynamic package.
No, I mean,
he had the most unstoppable shot.
No, he did not. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had the most unstoppable shot. It's been proven.
That's what I just said. I think
Kareem, not Hakeem.
I said the same thing. Kareem. I said the same thing.
Okay.
Kareem had the most unstoppable shot.
You realize
Hakeem, I know their names sound similar.
Yeah, but in terms of skill,
Hakeem had the most unstoppable package.
Yeah.
Meaning that guards were like, teach me how to do what you do.
Right. Yeah.
Kobe Bryant says, hey, Hakeem, can you teach me how to play in the post?
Right.
Because one shot is great if you're 7 foot tall.
Right.
But if you're not 7 foot tall, you can use that whole package. Kareem didn't have to worry.
I believe Magic Johnson used the same package to get the game winner against Boston. Now, this is footnote.
Yeah, he did do that.
It was a junior skyhook, yes, but
it's a skyhook though.
Yes, but no. If you just look historically, every championship team has at least 2 All-Stars, if not 2 or 3 All-Stars, and at least 2 guys who make the Hall of Fame.
So my only problem with that, because I know we're I ain't calling the other man delicious, big ego. Cause I know his real name. I don't whatever.
Super confident.
Right.
I mean, just thinking me as it's Kobe Day. We can recognize egos on Kobe Day.
I can't call another grown man delicious. So that being said, though. You see 2 All-Stars. The problem is that certain players' influence and their gameplay help create All-Stars.
Exactly.
And once they leave said player, they are no longer All-Stars.
Exactly.
And they were never All-Stars prior to that.
So who's an example of that?
Derek Fisher.
Well, Derek Fisher was an All-Star.
Excuse me?
Derek Fisher was never an All-Star. He never made an All-Star team.
No, he wasn't All-Star. He's going to check it out. He got the mouse. He got the phone.
You know what?
We can tell you the Lakers in 1998 had 4 All-Stars on the team. It was Nick Van Exel, Eddie Jones, Kobe Bryant, and Shaq. That's the most All-Stars since the 80s that they had made the team.
Okay.
Yeah, but Fish was never an All-Star. Fish, and again, Fish is what I call, like Shaq likes to call, he's a great other. He's a superstar in his role, but he was never an All-Star. He's not a guy who's going to make the Hall of Fame. Robert Horry was never an All-Star, not going to make the Hall of Fame, but those guys were great stars in their role.
He's going to make the Hall of Fame, bro.
No, Robert Horry's not going to make the Hall of Fame.
He's going to make the Hall of Fame, bro.
He's not going to make the Hall of Fame. I promise you he's not going to make the Hall of Fame.
Put money?
Yeah, I can put money on it. He's not going to make the Hall of Fame.
Man, you're a bad man to be able to bet on what media thinks. I never give any credit to media, nor do I put any value on who they vote as MVP. Not to throw dirt on the current MVP. But
yeah. The problem, the issue with Robert Horry, if Robert Horry makes the Hall of Fame, then you're going to have to take a lot of teams, 5th or 6th best player, and put that guy in the Hall of Fame as well. It's Robert Horry's clutch, in the playoffs with hitting big shots. Yeah, nobody will dispute that. I think he's one of the 15 most clutch playoff players ever. But, the regular season does count when you look at the Hall of Fame, and he was never that guy in the regular season. His thing was always playoff time. He came through. Now, if there's a playoff pro Hall of Fame, Robert Horry is absolutely a Hall of Famer. But in the regular season, his regular season numbers and just his impact in the regular season isn't going to put him in the Hall. There are guys who, didn't do much in the playoffs, but had these great regular seasons that make the Hall of Fame. I'm not going to call out any names, Dominique Wilkins, but the point is, there are guys who have these dominant regular seasons throughout their careers that the media is going to consider. They're not going to just look at what you did in the playoffs,
Agreed. Even though Robert Horry was definitely at his peak at the championship era in Houston, he seemed very Pippen-esque. He didn't have that long-term consistency.
What's interesting, and now that I want to make this a Rockets conversation, I've had discussions with Rockets fans about those mid-90 Rockets, and a lot of them feel like Horry underachieved with the Rockets. Yeah. That he never really lived up to the billing that they thought he was coming in with. And remember they traded him to Detroit, for Sean Elliott, and there was a physical issue, and they ended up sending Horry back to Houston. Yeah, right. So they tried to get rid of him because, and again, some of it was just he wasn't living up to the expectations, and at the time they were trying to play him as a 3, when really kind of one of the first stretch 4s of that era. So. There was always some concern about Horry, but nobody would take it. The man has 7 rings. He was a big part of winning all 7 rings.
He was the shot.
I mean, he hit some big shots. Nobody will dispute that. But
shot Bob.
But those regular seasons were average at best. And I mean, I'm being nice when I say average.
Okay. So it's really tough for me to say that, Kareem isn't the greatest Laker for me because he spent so much time in the Lakers uniform.
Right.
But being that those early 80s years, 85 is when I was able to start watching Laker games and know what I was watching.
Right.
And from 85 on, that was really Magic's show.
And it was. I mean, I remember my first NBA finals I can recollect is the 84 finals, Celtics. But I remember 85 even greater because I remember the Memorial Day Massacre and how Kareem looked like he was literally on his last leg. He was 38. Everybody was saying he was done. And then the rest of the series, he came out and he dominated. And he's the oldest finals MVP ever, obviously. And, he was a guy who was still well, we'll see. But he was a guy who was still, up until probably his last 2 years, was still giving people the business. And then it became Magic's team. Guy was 40 years old. It became Magic's team. And Magic became the leading scorer and winning MVPs. And James Worthy obviously kind of shifted into that second star role next to Magic. But anyway, just want to talk just about kind of your love for the Lakers and obviously it started in the 80s, and then you kind of had that down decade or down early part of the decade after Magic retired. Do you kind of remember that era and those kind of 4 years without, I call it post Magic, pre Shaq?
I remember very well. Those were the 4 years when I was probably, well, even when I was still arguing against Jordan fans about Magic's greatness and trying to prove how dominant he was. Because if you remember those was it the 90 finals? Bulls Lakers
91. Yeah.
Bulls Lakers. When that was the only time that the two best players, Laker and Bull, got to go against each other. And even though Magic couldn't necessarily handle Jordan had even a worse problem trying to touch Magic. And that's when I recognized Pippen's greatness.
Right.
And it became extremely evident to me how dominant and of a player Scottie Pippen really was on both ends of the court.
It's interesting. I remember that finals vividly too, because Magic is the reason I ever wanted to pick up a basketball. So I love Magic. So I'm with you on Magic. But I remember game one. Obviously, the Lakers won game one. Sam Perkins hit the shot late that they win. Jordan, missed a shot, late, and they win on the road. And then the Bulls dominate game two. But I remember game three specifically because the Lakers came out on a tear. And it was almost, and I mean, Magic was, they had Pippen guard Magic, but it was like Magic figured something out. And I mean, he literally goes off in that game, and that game ends up going to overtime, and the Bulls end up pulling out in overtime because Lakers basically ran out of gas, and
exactly.
Byron Scott couldn't buy a bucket from KFC in that series, and it was literally Magic and Worthy literally trying to carry everything. And Vlade Divac, kind of had his moments, in that series as well. But
he wasn't at his best either. Worthy. Come to find out after the series that he was dealing with injuries.
Yeah. And
but no excuses.
And the smart move that the Bulls made obviously was putting Pippen on Magic and him picking up Magic full court. But also Jordan was guarding Worthy because the Lakers were trying to post Worthy up quite a bit because Worthy had that post game that enough people don't talk about. But yeah, I just remember that series being closer, even though the final outcome was 4-1. Games 1, 3, and 5 were much closer than people really realized in that series. And to your point, it was the first time and really to me the last time we saw the two best players in the world go head to head in the finals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then, obviously you get to 96 and, you steal Shaq from the Magic because they lowballed him. And then you trade, then Jerry West goes out and trades Vlade Divac to Charlotte for that 13th pick in the 96 draft, who, Charlotte drafted Kobe at the time. Do you kind of remember, what you were thinking with this, 17-year-old Kobe coming in?
That it's a wrap. So when not 17-year-old, it was a wrap when Shaq came.
Right.
17-year-old Kobe. I didn't see how him and Eddie Jones made any sense whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
But once I saw them on the court together, there was no argument. I mean, I love Eddie, and I wanted to see him stay. That was probably my first experience with, what's good for the fans isn't always good for the team.
Right. Yeah.
So watching Eddie leave was a fake tear. It wasn't emotional enough that I was actually going to cry about it.
Right. Yeah.
I was upset, but I also saw enough spark in Kobe to not miss him.
Yeah, and using Eddie Jones to obviously get Glenn Rice, I thought, was a good move for the Lakers because, again, adding that third floor spacer, that shooter, next to Shaq was just a big help.
That's what I thought, but he still didn't live up to those Laker expectations that we had for him.
Well, yeah, and it became a money issue too. I mean, they weren't getting ready to pay him, the superstar money that he wanted. And then he rightfully earned in Charlotte because, he was an all-star in Charlotte. He was an all-star MVP in Charlotte. People forget, but and I remember even that '96 Laker team, going back a little bit, having just a lot of talent. It was a loaded roster, and I remember, you had Sid Sabalos, you had, Fox, you had Van Exel, you had Eddie Jones, you had a young Kobe, you had Shaq, you had Eldon Campbell. I mean, it was that team had they had some players.
Just had the
Well,
wrong
that was
coach.
99, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said that was 96?
96. That was the 96 season. Yeah.
Yeah, but the coach was the
The
problem.
coach was Dale Harris.
Yeah.
And I think he was a little overmatched, particularly in the playoffs. And that team, went out, kind of early. And then you go out and get, the Zen Master after a year off and Phil Jackson. Talk to me about your thoughts when Phil Jackson comes in and becomes the Lakers, head coach.
Definitely wasn't a fan of Dale Harris ever. But, being a Pat Riley fan and realizing how that maturity and experience can benefit if you're all about winning,
Right.
I had no problem with him biting the page out of Mike's book and saying, yeah, we can utilize that coach's skills no matter how old and slow and physically unfit he might be, because he was mentally sharp enough to be able to give them that mental focus that they need in order to actually start winning championships again.
Yeah. And I always said, if you look at the 99-2000 season, that was the one year where I felt in his career, Shaq was a 4.0 student. And that from the start of the season all the way to the end,
Okay.
he was really trying to show you he was the best student in the class.
Yeah.
And then they win the championship. Obviously, you win the first championship, you beat Indiana. It has been, a little bit of a title drought, about 12 years since the last championship. What was your feeling as a Laker fan, beating Indiana and winning that first championship in 12 years?
I was a little, sad that it took that long, because I think that every 10 years is the standard. You don't go more than 10 years without winning the championship.
Right.
In the way that we did it, you were able to forget, that 88 to 2000 drought, and then start off that millennium the right way. It made you forget about Y2K.
Right.
Because everything was good in Lakerland again.
Right.
Kind of like what we did in 2020 again. You kind of forgot about the pandemic when all things are right, and the Lakers are back on top again.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because if you look historically, just in sports in general, but teams usually, depending on when they're put together, can have about a 10-year good run, and then the following 10 years are probably going to be tough because you had such a good run in those first 10 years. You didn't have a lot of high draft picks. You probably didn't have a lot of cap space because, again, you put all your chips into that 10-year run. So it really wasn't surprising that the Lakers went 10 years without winning a championship. It was just because of all the success in the 80s, it was going to be hard in the 90s to really, recapture that. And again, that success in the 80s, I don't think we'll ever see that again. I mean, a team, 8 finals in 10 years, finals appearance in 10 years. I don't think we'll see that, from a franchise. That's just hard. It's just the attrition and things. And I want to go back to something you said earlier about Akeem. You said the retirements, had to be factored into why Akeem, that Bulls team, if you remember in '93, was really they were kind of running out of gas too. I don't know if Jordan comes back in '93 for the '93-'94 season, if they make it back, because they'd gone on that really long run for 3 years. It's just hard. I think it was just, and given kind of where things were historically at that time, they were due to have some drop off, and second, that they really struggled with the Rockets in the regular season. So had they met the Rockets in the finals, I think the Rockets probably get them, because they struggled against those Rockets teams, particularly when Vernon Maxwell was guarding Jordan.
I'm sorry. I got one comment. When the Bills, I'm sorry. When the Lakers got Phil Jackson,
right,
I had one comment. I had one thought in mind. Shit.
That's kind of how I felt when the Warriors got Jerry West. I see where you're coming from.
Right? Yeah. No, it's understandable, of course.
I see where you're coming from.
So hey, so when Jerry West got motherfucking when Jerry West came over to the Warriors, sorry.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I was like, hey, high Kickstarter. My bad.
No, you're welcome. But he's out of the juice now. It's not going to work in the basement.
Say again.
It's not going to work in the basement. He went to Clipperland now, trying to.
Sean, just go ahead, take it over, bro. I'm sorry. I know, man. I'm just gonna call him Biggie, bro. I can't call you by the name. You gotta listen. I can't do it, brother. I just can't.
No, that's fine. So yeah, we spent some time on Laker history. I want to move forward because again, don't want this to go too long, but just kind of give me your thoughts on. I mean, obviously, this is probably the most interesting season if you really think about in NBA history, given the way the last season went with obviously the break with the pandemic and then coming back to the bubble and the season ending in mid-October. Kind of what were your expectations going into this season, into 2021 and the chase for number 18?
So in order to talk about this season, we got to talk about, the Kobe passing that torch.
Right.
Because there became a time, for most reasonable basketball fans, when I think that we could say that LeBron became the greatest player, taking that torch from Kobe. And when LeBron was during his peak run,
in Miami,
and even before then,
what?
Even before Miami, teams started to build defenses to try to stop LeBron. Even the Lakers were preparing for LeBron on the West Coast while LeBron was on the East Coast, knowing that if you can't stop LeBron, you're going to have a problem because LeBron's making it to the championship. But with the Celtics building their big three, and giving LeBron some problems until he went and formed his own big three that the Celtics couldn't challenge anymore. And then now I feel like it's all come full circle. He's come to a franchise to where it's either win or bust. We're not going to be okay with you taking us to the finals and losing. As a matter of fact, you're going to feel like we're trying to hunt you down if you go to the finals and lose. Because of the fact that we have such great expectations with the type of team that we have built. And I love to see what the Nets did with trying to build that next super team. I feel like it's Celtics all over again. I know that there's no animosity that's already pre-existing, no rivalry that's already pre-existing between the team. But you can bet that all these KD lovers have no excuses if the Nets do what they're supposed to do when we see this finals match between hopefully the two greatest players in the league.
So that
sounds like Tyler or bust to me.
So I'm guessing based on what you just said, you expect Brooklyn to be in the NBA Finals this year.
Without a doubt. And if they're not in the NBA Finals, I don't want to hear anyone ever talk about KD mistakenly being the greatest player in the NBA ever again.
Mistakenly, son.
So I want to be clear. I don't have the Nets making the NBA Finals this year.
Okay.
Primarily because, they made the move for Harden in the middle of a season or during the season. It usually takes a year for a team that comes together like that to kind of figure it out. So I don't have them going to the finals this year. I actually have Philly going to the finals against and playing the Lakers in the finals this year.
Now Philly only put that team together 10 games prior. I mean,
well, the reason why I have it is because you have their three best players have been there, in Embiid, Simmons, and Tobias Harris. They put some better ancillary parts around them, and Danny Green and Seth Curry and Tyrese Maxey and some of the guys they have coming off their bench. But the difference for me and what I told someone when Doc Rivers went to Philadelphia,
that's good.
Is very similar to when Phil went to LA. That you had a team, that was ready, that seemed like they were ready to take that next step, but they needed the right guy, piloting the ship for them to do it. And that was really Phil going to LA with Shaq and with Kobe, getting those two to buy in. I think Doc can do the same thing for Ben and for Joel and Philly. I don't know if they'll win it all, but I think they get to the finals just because of that.
I don't know about you, but I think coaches are really overrated in the NBA.
Really?
Absolutely. For two reasons. One, they do a really poor job at developing talent.
What?
Talent either comes and they're great, or they're not. Coaches work with what they have. Two is that basketball is basketball is basketball and basketball. When you play in between the lines, your preparation is what wins the games. It's not what the coach tells you during the play that wins games. Now, if you have another opinion, I'd like to hear you. You please delve into it, Cisco. Let's talk about coaching and its importance in the NBA.
Yeah. So this is going to be very easy. It's not that hard. Got 2 words for you. Actually, excuse me. 3 words. Golden State Warriors. Mark Jackson did a great job of assembling and motivating the talent for the most part. After that, it took Steve Kerr. To come in and correct that situation. And next thing you know, we were on a 5-year streak, and you had me saying, "Shit."
Okay, is that what you really believe? So if that's what you really believe,
that's evidence. That's evidence. That's evidence, bro.
That's what you really believe that Steve Kerr's the result, that those champions are a result of Steve Kerr's coaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it that they found themselves in the lottery the very next year after one player got hurt?
Wait. I got this one too. Well, let's see. Steph Curry got hurt. He came back, but
he played half that year. You didn't even make the playoffs. You hit the lottery.
He played 5 games,
and then they pulled him back out by choice.
Well, no, he came back. He came back, and then the season stopped because of the pandemic.
2, Klay Thompson was hurt. 3, Draymond Green was hurt, and we just lost KD.
Draymond Green played almost that whole season.
No, he didn't.
He was in and out with some nagging injuries.
Yeah. So
if Steve Kerr's such a great coach, how do you explain their failure with a stacked roster this year?
What are you talking? Okay, stacked roster.
They have a good team. How do you explain them being 4-12? Is that what they're at right now?
No, it's not.
They're in the playoff. They're in the playoff. If the playoffs started today, Golden State would make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they're maybe one game above 500. One game above. I think they're
AC right now in the West.
I need to pay more attention to the losing side of that bracket. I don't.
Yeah. So we're moving off. We're getting into rivalry stages here, and this is the reason why I was happy. I'm motherfucking happy during that little post Magic and pre Shaq. I was Warrior fan. I was happy.
Not bad.
Fuck Lakers.
So I'll say this about Steve Kerr. So if you look at when Mark Jackson was coaching the Warriors, their offense was very step-centric. There wasn't a lot of player movement. There wasn't a lot of secondary action. It was a lot of, the ball's in Steph's hands, and Steph's got to make everything happen. And that, again, can work in certain moments, but to sustain that for an entire season for a team that, again, had championship aspirations was only going to go so far. Defensively, the identity he created, a lot of that stuff carried over to the Steve Kerr era. But when Steve Kerr comes in, he modernizes the offense. One of the best things he did was put Iguodala on the bench and start Harrison Barnes, because Iguodala actually fit better with the second unit than Harrison Barnes did. But more than anything, he just modernized the offense. They were able to run, more sets where, again, Steph's off the ball. And I don't know if Draymond Green and Klay Thompson become Draymond and Klay under Mark Jackson, that, Steve Kerr taking some of the principles of the triangle, taking some of the principles that he learned in San Antonio under Pop, really ingrained that into that team. And of course, having Steph, being the kind of star he is, he really did culturally change, things that they did offensively. And that was what made them so dynamic.
Mic drop.
So I say coaching matters, but I think coaching matters at the right time. I don't know if Phil could have coached the '96 Lakers. He needed him going there was at the right time because again, you had Shaq and Kobe together for 3-4 years, hadn't had any playoff success really. He got there at the right time because again, he walks in with a certain cachet, and they have to listen. And so I think it does matter, but particularly when again you're talking about having these expectations of winning championships.
How about that? Especially with a guard-heavy offense, I think Steve Kerr was a great fit.
Right, and that was the other side of it as the league was shifting to more of a perimeter, style, to more perimeter style teams. Steve Kerr made more sense. And again, I don't want to ever take away from what Mark Jackson did. He did a good job, but I always thought I thought he was way too rigid offensively, and he was only going to take them so far, unfortunately.
Well, I think the Lakers are showing you that even though this is a guard-centric league,
right,
that you can still win from inside.
Yeah, of course. And again, big talent beats small talent.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, you have one of the top 5 players in the league as well. Outside of LeBron, you have one of the top 5 players in the league as well. Who's your big man?
Which is why I say that Lakers are not a guard-centric team in the slightest.
Right.
But we're still the most dominant.
For now.
Yeah.
For now.
I agree with you.
So let me ask you this, and I've argued this about the Lakers, and I firmly believe, because I want to, before we get to your Lakers all-time starting 5, I got to ask you this. Kyle Kuzma. I thought when the Lakers got Anthony Davis, I said Kyle Kuzma can now fit into that number 3 James Worthy role where he literally runs the floor and he can dominate running the floor. He doesn't have to worry about having a bunch of sets called for him if he just gets out on the break and uses that athleticism and that 6'9" frame, and with a passer like LeBron. And again, defensively, what AD can do, he could average 20 points in his sleep if he just runs the floor. Give me your take on Kyle Kuzma.
I feel like Kyle Kuzma's been put in a very strange predicament, and he's had to adjust his gameplay, which has been a challenge for him to make those adjustments in a timely fashion. Starting off with the Kobe years when he was allowed freedom to be able to score with those young Lakers, and then when LeBron came, he suddenly became a big. He went from getting a lot of touches and ball handling to we want you to play more of a 3-4 position. And he's just not that mentality. And now this year, if you notice, they've got him actually moving into a more of a 2-3 position.
Right.
And I think that's the fit that he's most comfortable with.
Right.
But now he's got to readjust his game to realize, hey, we want you to shoot the ball every time you touch it again. And that first year when LeBron came, it was, hey, Kuzma, don't be so quick to shoot. Right. Now this year we're like, hey, why didn't you shoot it? So I feel like Kuzma is a great fit with that team in that and looking at the economics of what it takes to be able to build a roster within the salary cap, that he's paid exactly what he's worth.
Right.
And it's very difficult to be able to get that value out of a 2-3 player with defensive skills. He might not be a premier defender, right, but he makes guys like Kawhi Leonard and
Paul George,
the Suns guard, Paul George,
Devin Booker.
Yes, Devin Booker.
Right.
Actually have to work very hard to be able to get those buckets. And that's something that LeBron doesn't have the energy to do on a nightly basis. Right. So he does that role well, especially since KCP, some of that defensive responsibility is coming off of him to allow his legs to be more free so that he can shoot 50% from the three-point line. Because when you guard the best player, that 3-point percentage is going to decline for the average player.
Oh, yeah.
So do you think Kyle Kuzma is achieving, underachieving, overachieving?
I think that he's achieving, that he's not overachieving, he's not underachieving, that he's doing just enough to be able to make the Lakers be successful.
Last year, do you think he was achieving, underachieving, or overachieving?
Last year, I think he was underachieving.
Okay.
I think that's mainly because of the fact that they were trying to match him up against bigs and he was getting exposed. he was guarding threes and those stretch forward.
He's
Even
6'10",
though he's 6'9", even though he's 6'9", with a heck of a vertical. I got to find that out in person. I didn't realize how high that guy can jump until I actually saw him playing against the Wizards. He's just not that type of player. And it's kind of like, I don't want to compare him like to a Rashard Lewis type player. You don't put Rashard Lewis guarding anybody in the post. And even though Rashard Lewis is a defensive liability, you knew that he was more of a wing player than he was inside. And now that they've got him focusing on the perimeter, he's a lot more effective at that. He doesn't mind chasing smaller guards around and trying to block shots because he just doesn't have the type of footwork and smarts that it takes to be able to guard big men. And it puts him in a better position to be able to excel.
Right. So I want to move forward because I know we're getting, close to almost an hour here, but I got to ask you, I want you to, given your longtime Laker fandom, to put together your all-time Lakers starting five. But the caveat is you can't change people's position. So, if a guy didn't play a certain position, you can't put him at that position. So I want your Lakers all-time starting five.
My Lakers all-time starting five. So that's not changing the position is an interesting caveat, but the point guard, you have to go with the greatest point guard of all time, Magic Johnson, clear cut. The shooting guard, really simple. Best shooting guard in Laker history is Kobe Bryant.
Right.
The small forward, we're going to put him back at his natural position, not the position that he's playing over the last year and a half, which is LeBron James.
Wow, you got LeBron James as your Laker?
As my small forward. Yes. And then James Worthy at power forward. And sorry I got to do this to you, Shaq, but Kareem is going to be my center.
Don't be sorry about that. He deserves that. He deserves that.
Yeah. No.
I'm sorry.
No, Kareem deserves it. And so I have one thing, because I've always argued that Worthy played the small forward because he always played with either AC Green or Kurt Rambis, or in some cases, very early in his career, Bob McAdoo in the starting lineup. So I know people say Worthy was a 4, Worthy was a 3. He was just 6'9" and ran the floor like a deer, but he was really more of a 3. So, because I always argue with Laker fans, like, you want to move Worthy to the 4, Worthy's really not a 4, he was a 3. So in that, who is the best power forward in Lakers history?
Well, hold on, Sean, hold on. Yeah. Me as a Warrior fan, I would like to give my Lakers all-time starting five, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
Okay, cool. At my 2 guard, I'll put Smush Parker. At my 5, I will put I want to give talent. I'll put Divac of Lai Divac. At the 4, who else will I put? I will put let me see. A point guard, I would definitely at the 4. Who would I put? 4.
You gonna go with Medvedenko? I mean, really? You gonna go there?
I would go with Mark Madsen.
Mark Madsen. Samaki Walker.
Like, you know what? Hey, wasn't Kwame Brown a Laker too?
Yes, he was.
Wait, move Divac off. Kwame Brown at the 5. At the 2, I would put who would I put on there? At the 4, I would put AC Green because he doesn't score, but he does defend well.
Well, AC Green made an All-Star team, so
he made an All-Star team, so that's talent. At the 3, of course. At number 2, at the 2 though. At the 2, however, I said smush the 2. At the 3 though, I have got to put Luke Walton. Oh man, he was just so phenomenal. And at the 1, who would I put at the 1? Let me see. At the 1, I will put a cheerleader. How about that?
You put Jeremy Lin at the 1. How about that?
Yeah.
No, he actually has some talent. So no, I wouldn't do that.
He had talent for 2 weeks. He didn't have no talent. He had talent for 2 weeks. Not that.
I don't know if you saw those practice sessions that Kobe talking with Jeremy Lin. He didn't hold up very well to that, and that's I think what ended his time in LA very quickly.
No. His career was 2 weeks.
Jeremy Lin didn't realize Kobe was testing his fortitude, and he failed that test.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess I want to ask you before we move on. So, who is the greatest Lakers power forward of all time?
I'm gonna have to say Michael Thompson.
Michael Thompson.
Yeah.
I can.
Especially with those other scorers, Michael Thompson as a defender and spacer because he can hit that open jumper is a good fit for any offense, whether you're running a triangle, a run and gun, or walking it up the court and letting Kareem go to work.
All right. Okay. I can see that. So, we always close these things out with something we call top 3 at 3. So I'm just going to ask you 3 questions, and I just want your top 3 answers to these 3 questions. So the first one is going to be your top 3 most underappreciated Lakers of all time.
Smush Parker.
My top 3 most underappreciated Lakers of all time. Underappreciated. Who did they? Prior to his passing, Kobe would be the most underappreciated Laker.
You think Kobe's underappreciated?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Not just by the media.
Kobe Bryant's unappreciated? That's impossible. Underappreciated.
Underappreciated.
You don't think he's a type of overappreciated?
No.
A tad bit, a wee bit?
Kobe's overappreciated? Spoken like a true Warrior fan. So
I mean, I try.
And I'll explain really quickly before we move on to the next 2. But Kobe's underappreciated because of the fact that he was the driving force of the NBA, even after the Colorado fiasco. Even while they tried to put a crown on Steve Nash when it was not deserved. He was the hardest worker, the most unstoppable, and the clear-cut most dominant player in the NBA for a 4-year span before LeBron really stepped on the scene. And I would say 2007 is when LeBron identified himself as a force to be reckoned with. When he destroyed those reformed Detroit Pistons. They weren't necessarily the same Pistons as they used to be,
right?
But it was clear to say that Kobe had someone else to worry about on the other conference should they ever meet, and we all expected that to happen, just never got to see it.
Right.
And because of that, I say that the media underappreciated, which unfortunately has too much influence on the fans, and only Laker Nation really ride with him throughout that process. I think it took the rest of the NBA until about 2009 before they jumped back on the bandwagon and realized that Kobe hadn't retired yet, that he was still dominating.
My glasses fogging up.
Right, even though he was no longer the best player in the league at that point.
Right. He wasn't the best player in the league, but winning matters.
I think my glasses are fogging up because he's speaking some hot garbage. I don't know what's going on, bro.
Underappreciated Lakers. I think we're Michael Cooper and Byron Scott and their value to the Showtime era.
Right.
I would definitely agree with Michael.
Yeah. Even though Michael Cooper is up for the Hall of Fame this year, and I think he probably gets in, deservedly so.
Right.
But yeah.
But wasn't he the one that was recognized as the one trying to guard Dr. J when he did the scoop? Wasn't that him? Was it him?
Everybody,
when he did that scoop.
You're talking about one of the top 20 players ever in Dr. J. Like, let's
but if you were, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
that's interesting. If Dr. J's in your top 20 and Kobe's number 12, is he really in your top 20?
I have Dr. J number 20. I have him number 20. Yeah, I have him number 20.
So Sean,
because I count what he did in the ABA as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At the same time, Sean's top 10 or 20, questionable.
As long as Dirk's not in there, we're all right.
Questionable.
You said what?
As long as Dirk Nowitzki's not in there, we might be over there.
No, I have him top 25, but I don't have him top 20.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Dirk is the second greatest international player ever. But I don't have him top 20. I have him top 25.
Who's number one?
A Dream.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
that's disrespectful.
I'm sorry. Consider him an international player. Look at you.
Sean knows his stuff. He knows a little something.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it.
Except for hip hop.
Well, first of all,
we're not going there.
The second top three. The second top three. I want to know your top three favorite moments, regardless of sport, as an LA sports fan.
He ain't got too many.
It's so hard to pick three is the problem.
No, it's not. It's not hard at all.
And you know what? I'll put a caveat.
Please.
You're non-Laker sports fan.
Ooh, he don't know nothing about it. He's a basketball guy.
Yeah, I know.
I watch this basketball. Are you kidding me? But even as a not a Rams fan, which I'm really not, seeing Kurt Warner win with the Rams.
What? That don't count.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't count. Next.
What do you mean it doesn't count?
It doesn't count, sir. I'm sorry, sir. It doesn't count.
You said.
So if I was you, I would have picked Marcus Allen when he ran, did a semi-reverse against the Redskins, and I think they won a Super Bowl. Is that correct?
They did.
Okay, that would be one. That me being a California guy. I'm a California guy with you, right? I'm a California guy, and you're a Raiders fan.
According to geography, we're from the same state, but we know Northern and SoCal. There's a big divide in between that. Y'all trying to leave the state? Let's not act like that didn't happen.
First of all, we do leave the state, but that's neither here nor there. But what I'm saying though is like if I'm see, first of all, he did that under the Oakland Raiders, so we understand that part, right? Or was it LA Raiders?
They were the LA Raiders.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry because they left in 1982. This is right. I'm not gonna go there, but okay. I'm sorry, bro. Continue. I'm sorry, sir.
And non-Laker moments.
That's caveat.
After Kurt Warner. Wow.
You can't use that, bro. That's in St. Louis. You can't use that.
I don't give a damn. Who said it had to be LA? Does it have to be LA?
He just said LA.
I said LA, but here's the thing, right? And
don't do that, Sean. No.
Here's what I always argue.
Here we go.
Okay, because again, you're dealing with this now. You were a Raider fan. They've left the state. They're in Vegas. No, he's a Raider fan.
Right.
They've left on to Vegas. So since they're in Vegas, did your fandom go with them to Vegas?
It did not.
It did not. All right.
I mean, my love and appreciation for them does, but it did not.
Yeah.
Fuck the Raiders.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. So
they left from Oakland, went to LA, came back to Oakland, and they went to Vegas. If you have a particular number, if you're born in California, your Social Security number should start with, I think, a 6, somewhere in there. If that's the case, you can't be a Raider fan because the Davises have disrespected you. So fuck.
Very much so. Very much so. And there's no amount of money that can buy a team's worth to be able to leave the greatest state in the nation.
I agree.
So
totally agree.
Yeah.
You said top 3 though. Let me get my top 3. USC winning a national championship. That's right. That's good, right? Is that good? That's good, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a non-Laker moment.
Okay, cool. And then one non-Laker moment. It had to be LA, right?
I mean, it should be LA. I mean, you got the World Series champs.
Why you stealing my shine? Why you stealing my shine?
No, I'm just throwing out some ideas.
I'm about to go. Dodgers win the championship. and I'm from the Yay, so
and it matters even more after the Lakers win.
Huh?
Yeah, that's two crowns in the same city at the same time. We
Right.
can't ignore that. We have to mention that.
Right.
So we've done that many times, and California. That's what we do. That's what we do.
We're talking about same city though, same state.
I'm just saying we do that though. We do that a lot. Northern Cal, obviously Oakland A's, San Francisco Giants, 49ers. We've done that. So that's nothing new for us Californians.
Right.
Floridians got a problem. I'm sorry, you got a fucking problem. Number 3. What's number 3? Top 3. Oh yeah, that's right. When the fucking Raiders went to Vegas. How about that?
You said that's a good moment?
That's a great move for since we're dividing the state in half. Absolutely. Bye-bye. Peace out. Don't want you. Don't need you.
Spoken as someone who truly hates the Raiders. Clearly.
I it's not that I just hate the Raiders. I don't want to say I hate Southern California. I hate Southern California, I've never been past Anaheim.
I understand.
Really?
You don't have enough W's to come.
Hey, don't talk about W's with me. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
49ers, Warriors, Giants, and A's.
So
you got UCLA. You got
UCLA.
You got UCLA. I gave you one.
Don't stop there, because that best LA team, that best California team, wins every decade.
Who
wins every decade? I'm gonna count 2000 as part of the 90s because do you what you
just said, brother? Talk to me now. You just said you count the 90s as 2000. You can't do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because zero is
started in 99.
Okay, so what are you counting? What are you counting?
I'm saying that the Lakers win in every decade. That's what I'm saying.
So all right.
2010 being part of the 2010s, and then 2000 being part of the
90s. No, if you're using the same logic, 2010 should actually count as 2009. 2000s. So technically, you didn't win in every decade, but it's fine. It's fine. It is.
That's to get into that. My bad.
Yeah.
Can't call another grown man. This is ego.
All right. So at last top 3. I want in your estimation the top 3 musical artists who represent LA the best of what LA is about.
Oh my God!
And it's going to be alive right now.
They don't necessarily have to be alive, but just your top 3 LA artists who represent LA the best.
Tupac is Northern California.
Actually, he was born on the East Coast, but that's either him.
Don't matter where he was born.
Tupac,
but he spent most of his life in LA, so he's a Californian now.
No. So first of all, his mother was a Black Panther, and even though they didn't start necessarily in Oakland, they resided in Oakland. Number 2, he lived in Marin County, so known as Coke City. So that's there. So we claim Northern California claims Tupac.
I'll give you Tupac because really Los Angeles is more of a Snoop Dogg vibe, anyways.
So you got Snoop as one of your top 3?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ice Cube.
Okay.
We got beef?
No, we got beef, man. Because Sean has. I don't want to take it there, bro. I don't want to take it there, bro. I don't want to take it there, bro.
Hold on. Before you go there, I want to hear his top 3, and then I'll explain.
And of course, Kendrick Lamar. Absolutely. Nipsey had an amazing influence on the Southern California culture, but I think that Snoop and Nipsey cover a lot of the same ground as far as their influence on the culture.
Right.
So I think that it's necessary to be able to diversify it with a different realm in Kendrick Lamar.
All right. Okay.
So we're not going to include Dr. Dre in that mix?
No.
What the fuck? Okay. All right, next. I'm sorry, Sean. Go ahead.
No, it's fine.
If you're gonna go where I'm gonna go, where you're about to go.
No.
I'm gonna
It's
put
gonna
you
be very
last.
quick. It's gonna be very quick because it's obviously getting a little late on the East Coast.
All right. I know you old guys gotta go sleep. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, some of us have to work for a living, but that's neither here nor there. So the reason why Cisco is acting this way is because I don't have Tupac in my top 10 hip hop artists of all time. I have him number 11. I have Kendrick 10. And I have Ice Cube 9.
If you even think about agreeing with that, that's impossible. Do not even think about agreeing with that.
Hold on.
I don't agree with putting Kendrick in front of Tupac, but
my God.
The only reason why
I do agree with putting Ice Cube in front of Tupac.
Yeah. So his big argument is I should not have Ice Cube ahead of Tupac.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I have Kendrick. I have Kendrick ahead of Tupac for this very reason and this very reason alone. I take the one thing the both of them have, and I look at their catalogs. You look at Kendrick's catalog in total, it's better than Tupac's catalog in total.
That's not true.
Hold on. I'm not saying that All Eyes on Me and Me Against the World are not great albums, but Strictly for Month and Tupacalypse Now are not great albums. They're not great albums. They're okay, but they're not great albums.
This is where you're shortchanging his catalog. Well, hold on. Before you go, you're shortchanging it because last time I checked, he's the only rapper I know that's had some of his catalog or his unpublished stuff or whatever put into a book of poems. That's catalog. You can't deny that.
I'm not disputing that. What I am saying,
but that's catalog though. That's part of his catalog.
What I am saying is, again, I judge guys on the things that they share, not what one of them doesn't share. All of these artists share catalogs. They all have catalogs. That's what I base it on. Because someone decides, because Tupac is not with us anymore, they want to memorialize him by putting his lyrics or his music in a book or in a book of poems, does not factor into his catalog, the music he made.
It does count because it's his lyrics that he made for music.
But Tupac is the Kobe of California rap, though.
Of rap. But, I see the hit of that.
Of rap, period. You could say that. I mean, there's a couple Kobe's in rap, but I think the KRS-One was a Kobe too, and I think that Rakim was a Kobe also.
Right. And so, like, I have Tupac in that 11. I have Tupac 11. I have Slick Rick 12, and I have KRS-One 13. But I have Kendrick 10, and I have Cube 9, and Rakim is 8 actually.
And he hasn't. So I tell you what, publish that, and let's see what happens with that list.
I have to ask: is Black Thought in your top 10?
Oh, I
Black Thought is top 3 for me.
Okay.
Yeah. No. I know but I go.
But what's funny though, he doesn't have Big Pun. Big Pun was that guy. Because and we have many of arguments to where we cannot blame like Biggie, like Tupac, like certain artists, like even Big L, and saying, hey, look, that life was cut short. So we weren't really able to.
That. I'm not disputing that. I will never dispute
that.
But
lyrically?
But again, if it's all about lyricism, you would have someone like Immortal Technique much higher on the list if it's purely about lyricism.
That's true.
No, I'm saying you're saying
that's the case that Ice Cube has to be in top 50.
No, I'm saying that it all factors in.
He's not lyrical enough.
He's trash, bro.
Oh, stop that!
Come on. In the 80s, come on, early 80s.
You don't have
I got you. Easy work. I give 80s. You know what? So Cube is more lyrical than KRS-One.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. What I told you with Cube is if you have to with Cube in the equation of Cube, you have to take what he did with NWA, look at what NWA was without Ice Cube. They were still good, but they weren't the same NWA. And then take his first 4 solo albums.
I have listened to one of them.
And again, take his.
I have, but.
And again, the stuff that Tupac was talking about is a lot of stuff that Cube was talking about, but Cube was going there earlier.
What are you talking? What?
Let's keep it real though. Music is entertainment though.
Yeah, it's entertainment, but
so the album is just a form of listening to it, watching it, and what you
Q
see.
didn't do anything he posted about or wrote about or sung about. He did none of that.
And again,
none.
You're taking activities outside of the studio. It's not about that. It's about
the entertainment.
It's about the work and the art. It is not about, because again, if that's the case, you want to factor in all these subjective things about some of these artists. You cannot do that when you have to take the one thing they all share. Because there are some artists who are great who don't do any of that stuff, but their work, their music is great. So
I mean, it's entertainment. It's acting. It's not real life.
For some of them, it's extremely real life.
And those are the ones that are least successful.
Right. And again,
I disagree. You got Big E, Tupac, Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah, and again, you have to take. I tell you, you have this argument, just like when you talk about your top 10 basketball players ever. You can't take the fact that Jordan has a brand and that's why he's the best ever. That does not factor into the equation. His shoes have nothing to do with his ability on the basketball court. Take what they do in between the white lines, and that's how we judge them. Same with music. You take what they did in the studio and what they put out, and that's how we judge them. What they do outside of that does not factor into
That's what I'm saying, though.
The music.
They took what he did in between the white lines, and they made a book about it. That's what I'm saying.
And again,
I mean that's part of the catalog, right?
I don't know. They basically took his practice sessions and wrote and made a book into. That's not what you did in between the white lines.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's
between the white lines. That's the very difference of white lines.
No, because that doesn't. It's not
because he was. What did they say? He was Kobe. They weren't. Kobe say he wasn't in the gym shooting free throws.
Of course, 100% agree that we applaud Kobe's work ethic. But if Kobe was the greatest practice player of all time and had no championships, nobody would care.
I'm telling you,
we talk about practice.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you play ball on some level, right?
Yeah, he played ball. He patterned his game off of fucking Kobe.
Right.
Because he never passed the ball. I was on the bench a lot of times, but when I was in the game, he never passed the ball to me.
Right. Who stole everything from Jordan. So my point is
proved everything that Jordan did.
No, he stole everything. He even said it himself.
And then he did it better.
He even said it himself.
Listen, he did better though. He did it better. He did it better.
He didn't do it better.
He did because his career lasted longer than Jordan.
He didn't do it better.
He absolutely did.
Without traveling, without throwing the ball, and without getting extra.
And had a better post game.
He did it in. Oh no, stop that. He did it.
He did have a better post game.
He did not have a better post game. Watch
Jordan
from '96 to '98. Kobe did not have a better post game.
I can watch Jordan. I can watch him right now, and I guarantee you.
Listen, everything Kobe did, he got from Jordan,
and except for the footwork.
Everything he got from Jordan, and again,
he got some stuff.
And again, let's go. Why did Kobe have to get better footwork? Because he wasn't the same caliber athlete that Michael was. He wasn't that freakish athlete. So of course, he had to work on other things fundamentally to be at that level.
So that's your basis of reason saying he didn't have better footwork than Jordan. And when Kobe got when he got his footwork from the Dream.
I just said
he didn't surpass Michael.
I just said he had better footwork, but I said he had to do that because he wasn't the same level.
Doesn't matter what he had to do. It's just his footwork's better though, right?
He had to. Didn't I just say that? Are you not?
I hear you. No, I'm not. Because what you're saying is boggling my mind right now.
No, I just said the man had better footwork. You're not listening.
Okay, so we both agree that Kobe had better footwork, right?
But that's it. It's not, but that's it.
And a better, I wouldn't say better jump shot.
I don't know.
He would say what?
And because of that better footwork, his post game was better. Because Jordan
I would look at Jordan from '96 to '98. Look at him from '96 to '98. Look at
when he wasn't dunking on everybody every play, he would only dunk on you every other play.
When he would dunk on you every now and again. Look at his post and look at his footwork in the post.
It's still not Kobe-esque though.
It's not Kobe-esque.
And then
it's still up there.
And it's not like the best part of Kobe's game was his footwork. The best part of Kobe's game is that you can put him in a 5x5 square on the floor, knowing a double team was coming, and Kobe could still operate in that 5x5 square without having to move to other parts of the floor, get to the rim. I don't care if you double team him in the corner.
Right, and then again, we
hit
have
that shot. Jordan never had that in this
and
game.
we have to factor in again, and this is why it's so hard to make an apples to apples comparison with the two, because both of them play in very distinct eras. Jordan in the 90s, the lane was packed. You had illegal defense because centers could basically pack themselves in the lane. So of course Jordan couldn't do that because that wasn't what the game was. Once they changed the rules in the early 2000s, it allowed for a little more spacing. You had the defensive 3 seconds, so centers could be lifted from the lane. So Kobe could do more things like that in that small space because that was what the rules allowed for. But it's not an apples to apples comparison. I think, again, when we talk about Kobe, we have to say, listen, he is the closest thing we've seen to Jordan. Nobody should dispute that. He is the closest thing, but he took the blueprint of Jordan and he made that his. And again, he added things like his footwork and like going to work with Dream because that's how he had to continue to prove his game because his game wasn't necessarily, he wasn't this freakish athlete. Jordan, when you think about historically, Jordan's the first guy historically. You saw great athletes before Jordan, but they didn't necessarily have the fundamentals with it. Or you saw guys with great fundamentals like Larry Bird, but they weren't necessarily freakish athletes. Jordan was the first guy who really combined the two. And that's what made him so dominant. And he did
At
it.
what point did Jordan combine the two?
Say what?
At what? Because he didn't have a jump shot forever. At what point?
He didn't have a consistent jump shot. But remember, he changed. He had to change his base. Like he came in the league, and again, it wasn't a league where guys were expected to shoot a multitude of jumpers. He changed his base, and he really became a very good to great mid-range shooter. But a lot of it, if you look at his base, if you go back and you look at Jordan his rookie year, and again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we got to wrap up. But look at where the ball is when he on his shot, and then if you look a couple years later, where his release point changes and how he brings his elbow in and things, he had to learn to change his shot because he kind of had a push shot, which was not uncommon in that era for guys that have a push shot. You didn't necessarily have guys who had this textbook jump shot like Ray Allen ended up having or Klay Thompson. It was a lot of guys were learning to shoot with the push shot. So he changed his shot and look at his shot base, again, a couple years into his career.
Well, shooting wasn't necessarily I wouldn't say it wasn't so basketball shooting is a premium, obviously, but that long range shooting, the Klay Thompson, the Ray Allen you were talking about, they weren't the dominant part. It was the inside out game, right?
Right, but you had guys who played in the mid range, but even in the mid range, you didn't have necessarily what you would call a beautiful base on jump shots. It was very much a push shot.
So if I'm mistaking beautiful for effective,
no.
Are we that what we're doing?
What I'm saying is again, you didn't have guys who were necessarily shooters first. Shooting was a secondary part of their game, or sometimes a third part.
Right, because in the backcourt, it was passing first.
Right,
that's the big guy, right?
Michael Cooper and Byron Scott and Larry Bird.
Right, but look at
they would all agree. They would say that.
Yeah, look at Michael Cooper's. If you look at Michael Cooper's shot, you wouldn't say it's necessarily textbook form. It isn't the greatest form. He became more of a 3-point shooter in an era where there weren't 3-point shooting because that provided spacing for Magic, especially who wasn't a shooter at all, as you remember, and for Kareem down low. So he became more of a spot-up shooter. But if you look at his form, it's not necessarily – you wouldn't take a kid and say, I want you to watch Michael Cooper's form and watch his release and how he shoots.
No, you'll say look at John Paxson, look at Steve Kerr, look at Craig Hodges,
and again those guys played in the 90s. Those guys were playing in an era where shooting started to become a little more of a premium. I mean, you think about Larry Bird's first year in the NBA was the first year of the 3-point line in the NBA. So you didn't really have guys who were growing up, learning to be space shooters.
That's necessarily true because I'd say that because because the North Carolina State guy, I forgot his name. He was launched them before they had a 3-point line. So I don't disagree because okay, but still, never mind. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sean. I don't want to. I know we're going long. And
your favorite NBA player is of all time.
Who?
Let's go.
Sean.
Who was my favorite NBA player of all time?
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's not.
Oh, his personal favorite? His personal
No.
favorite is Ray Allen.
Well, Magic and Ray Allen. Those are the two guys I love. Magic and Ray Allen. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's motherfucking the GOAT.
Yeah.
Abdul-Jabbar.
And Clay after that. I love Clay Thompson.
Yeah.
I love silent assassins. I love guys who kill you and don't say nothing.
Magic talked a lot, but I don't know about Ray.
Well, Ray wasn't really a talker, but and I always tell people who didn't get to see Ray in Milwaukee and Seattle, you missed the best of Ray Allen in Milwaukee. If you didn't see him in Milwaukee and Seattle, Boston Ray was up there, different roles.
Right, he didn't have the sustained athleticism period to be able to as a Jordan or Kobe. Kobe was more athletic than Ray, but Ray.
Early in Ray's career,
Ray would dunk on you. Easy.
Ray would smash on you.
Yeah.
Like if you ran him off the 3-point line, he'd blow by you and smash on you.
Yeah, easy.
And he didn't shoot a lot of threes early in his career either because that wasn't the game. But yeah, no, Magic's my all-time favorite. I love Magic. No, I just again, I recognize Jordan for his greatness and for how individually good he was, but Jordan was not my all-time favorite. No.
And if I recall correctly, Kobe Bryant's the greatest Laker scorer of all time, followed by Kareem and Magic.
You say what?
That Kareem's point total was not as high as
No, Kobe scored more
in a
Laker. Yes, he scored
in a Laker uniform.
Yeah, because Kareem only played 14 years for the Lakers, where Kobe obviously played 20. Not Kareem.
I'm sorry. Did you say all-time scorer, or did you just say he wasn't the greatest Laker?
No, he's the greatest Laker scorer.
Because of that longevity,
my bad.
Because of that longevity and consistency. That's why even though I think that I agree with you that Kareem is
the
greatest player of all time.
Yes.
But
I love my brothers. I love them. When they agree with me, I love you guys.
Time in LA to be the greatest Laker.
What?
Kobe's longevity put him on top.
Longevity bullshit.
I see. That's where I have a.
Oh my God!
I don't want to say that. I don't even do that.
He won 5 titles in Lakertown. I mean, if you did it in 20 years or you did it in 14 years, it doesn't matter. He won 5.
Well, Magic won 5 in 13 years.
He scored almost 10,000 less points than Kobe did in Lakertown. It's close to 10,000.
So that's almost comparable as far as Kobe. I think Hakeem leads the league in blocks all time.
Yes.
But they didn't count They didn't count blocks as a stat for the first 3 years that Kareem was in the NBA. I'm pretty sure that would happen at or Wilt.
Well, Bill Russell would probably be the all-time blocks leader.
No, I think Kareem and or Wilt would have got him easily.
Yeah, I think Wilt would
easily.
No, I mean
they didn't have goaltending back then, and there were some of those shots that were coming down. He would. Pop.
Yeah, but I mean he was defensively, he was a maestro. Like he was that guy. I don't know if they'll ever go back and try to count them, but he was that
I'd like to know, but I don't know. I'm just judging by the stories I heard about Wilt beating the Lakers by himself. I think it was the 87 Lakers that he came into practice, and him and Magic got into it about who won the game. He was like, give me those 4 scrubs, you won't score another point. And 40-something-year-old Wilt Chamberlain
We'll have swag.
Championship Lakers out of their own gym.
Yeah. Hey, well, listen. I mean, Wilt was obviously an athletic freak, And again, I have him in my top 10 all time. But
you ain't got Tupac. I'm sorry. I know 2 different things. I got you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna mute.
Thank you. So. Yeah, no. I have Wilt as my all-time. He is one of the all-time greats. I think he is one of the all-time greats. But yeah, I just it would be. I wouldn't. Wilt's a very interesting conversation for me because I've always was so individually dominant, but I don't know if he necessarily made his teammates better. And he won the championship in '67 in Philly, and he acted like the team was trash. But he played with 2 other Hall of Famers on that team. So, Wilt's an interesting conversation for me. And then when he got to the Lakers, he was really a glorified role player. when he got to the Lakers. He had the name, but he was really a glorified role player. He wasn't the same dominant force. He was more of a rebounder and outlet passer and things of that nature. He could score, but that team was clearly Jerry West and then of course Elgin Baylor.
Underachieving, kind of like the 2004 Lakers.
Slightly, but I mean they ran up against the Celtics, and and again, I always say I think what the difference for me with Russell and Chamberlain was between the ears. I think Russell was one of the smartest players ever. I don't think Wilt was necessarily considered a smart player. I think Wilt could athletically do things. I'm sorry, I think Wilt could athletically do whatever he wanted. Like he decided I'm going to lead the league in assists, and he did. But just between the ears, I think that was the difference between him and Russell. Go ahead, Cisqo.
To me, it was a little bit the opposite. It was what was in the chest, the heart. I just think that because of what Russell went through, where he came from, and what he represented, he defined the struggle, and I think that's the reason why people have him over Wilt. As far as, like you said, at any point in time, Wilt can do anything he wanted, but just for me, a Bill, not necessarily between the ears, but that heart, you knew Bill was going to leave it out there 100% all the time, no matter what. 100% go.
You know what? You just made me realize something during this discussion. You asked me a question earlier, and I overlooked. You asked me who were the most underappreciated Lakers. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has to be number one.
He is not underappreciated, bro. He is the GOAT of basketball. What are you talking about?
When does he come up in GOAT conversations?
Well, the problem, see, this is another. We know what we can go on about this a little bit, but I want to wrap up here soon. We're going to actually do a live stream about this. The problem with Kareem for a lot of people is in the perception of those who don't understand the game of basketball is you're that tall, you're supposed to be that good. Mm-hmm. And like, no, there's a lot of 7-foot stiffs out here, like a lot. And then if you also look at the era when Kareem was at his dominant in the 70s, won 5 MVPs. But if you think about the 70s decade in terms of basketball, professional basketball, it's really the dark ages of professional basketball because not only did you have the NBA, you also had the ABA. And so Kareem really gets lost in that kind of GOAT conversation because people don't always talk about the 70s. Sometimes they act like the NBA started when Magic and Bird came in. And it's like, no.
Live TV.
There was a lot of NBA basketball. It was 32 years of NBA basketball before Magic and Larry even stepped on the floor. And Kareem, because he wasn't media friendly, because he was, and I think the media was afraid of him because while they appreciated athleticism, they didn't always appreciate Black intellectualism, which he embodied. Kareem does not come up in that GOAT conversation. And for me, if you take what he did in high school, college, and pros, he's the best ever, without question.
Yeah, but he got Muhammad Ali.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah. So, and now I think, people talk about him, but it's not in the same breath of Jordan. And I hate when they say it's Jordan or LeBron is the GOAT. I'm like, yeah, there's a guy 72 who played 20 years in the NBA who is probably better than both if you really look at their careers in a capsule. But yeah, we're actually going to do a live stream about that. We got to have you back when we do the live stream on that because I want to hear some people's thoughts on that.
And the fact you're a Laker fan, you didn't say Kareem. That's almost disrespectful, brother.
Very, very. That's why I had to. I know it's that the questions already came and went, but sometimes people realize we make mistakes, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, despite my big ego.
Hey, well, listen, this was fun.
I'm glad my fucking ear muscles off that shit. I don't know what he said, but it sounded like some ego shit.
Yeah, it was. We appreciate doing this, joining us. Definitely would love to have you back on the live stream at some point. I know it's getting late. We went longer than we wanted to, but this was fun. Minus Cisqo with his nonsense, but that's neither here nor there. I
can't wait to go top 50, top 20 NBA players. I can't wait to do this.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna have to start at 20. We ain't gonna make it past 20.
No, because I'm gonna destroy Sean easily.
You
Easy
what?
work. Easy work.
You think it's gonna be easy work?
Absolutely, I've destroyed you before, bro.
No.
Easy work. Easy
I'm
work.
gonna-
Easy.
I'm gonna tell you
I
somebody.
like to be a partial judge during
I'm
this.
gonna tell you what. I'm gonna tell you this. I got somebody in my top 20 nobody talks about. Nobody talks about. And it's only because if you look at his career, he didn't really have a long dominant era with any team in his career.
I bet I can guess who it is, but we're not going to do that. We'll save that for later.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Hey, remember this comment? Remember this comment right here, because that comment's gonna come again. I'm gonna bring this up about long, dominant, short. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
No, I said he had a long career, but he never a long dominant era with one particular team in his career.
Mm-hmm. Remember this. You too. Mark this down.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you all for watching. And again, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications, because when U3 Sports goes live, we want you on with us. Until next time, we'll see you later.
If you don't like, hate us, and then make a comment either way it goes.
Are you not entertained?
Huh?
Yeah.
Are you not entertained?
Yeah. Are you not yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, thank you all for joining us on U3 Sports Talk. And until next time, we'll see you later.
The West Side?
Hey, you see it right there, baby, all day.